There are certain motorcycles that don't simply enter the world. They arrive with a kind of quiet gravity, like a shifting of the wind before a storm, or the soft tremor of the earth before something vast begins to move. And when the first whispers of the Triumph Tiger 1300 Rally Pro for 2026 began weaving their way through rider circles, that's what it felt like. A subtle but unmistakable change in the air. A promise that a familiar name was about to grow into a new identity. Deeper, stronger, more confident, more knowing of the kind of world it was born to dominate. And tonight, as we settle in and let this story unfold at its own pace, I want you to imagine that you're right here with me. Someplace quiet, someplace where the mind can wander as easily as a motorcycle across a long empty road. Because this isn't just a review, and it certainly isn't a spec sheet. This is a moment to breathe in the spirit of a machine that seems built not just to ride, but to affect the soul of the rider who dares to take it into the unknown. Welcome back to SuperBike Intelligence, by the way. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, this slow unraveling of a bike's character, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us keep these journeys going, and it tells the algorithm that motorcycles still matter in a world obsessed with everything else. The Tiger 1300 Rally Pro. Even saying the name slowly gives it a certain weight, like rolling a stone in your hand and feeling the history embedded inside it. Triumph's Tiger line has always had this strange ability to stand at the crossroads of rugged adventure and refined engineering, as if someone took the endurance of a rally bike, the poise of a long-distance tourer, and the rebellious heart of a street machine, then blended them together until they formed something entirely their own. But the 2026 Rally Pro, it feels like the moment everything turned a corner. Like Triumph has finally stepped into a scale of ambition even bigger than the landscapes these bikes were built to conquer. There's an image I keep coming back to whenever I think about the Rally Pro. A rider cresting a ridge at daybreak, the kind of ridge where the mountains break open in every direction, where the cold wind feels like a baptism and the world you left behind feels impossibly small. The bike isn't rushing, it isn't roaring. It's moving with this quiet assurance, like it knows the land, like it's part of the terrain, choosing its line with a confidence that only comes from a machine built around the idea of exploration. That's the emotional core of the Tiger 1300 Rally Pro. That sense of being carried somewhere you might not have gone on your own, of being pushed gently but firmly toward the edges of your own limits. And it's funny, because even though we talk about adventure bikes in terms of suspension, geometry, engine mapping, all the usual suspects, what really matters is how they behave when they disappear under us. When they stop feeling like something we're controlling and start feeling like something we're learning to dance with. The 2026 Rally Pro seems engineered for that transition. The way the throttle rolls open feels like opening a book you've waited years to read. Slow at first, deliberate. You savor every millimeter until suddenly the story comes alive under your fingertips. Triumph's engineers have always had a talent for creating engines that don't just respond, but speak. And this new iteration of the 1300 Triple feels like a voice that has finally cleared its throat. Deeper, smoother, more resonant, echoing through the frame with a kind of muscular calm. There's torque, of course, a wave of it, but it's not the kind that punches. It's the kind that gathers you up and carries you like the rising swell of a tide. Open the throttle just a hair and the bike moves with you. Open it fully and the world stretches out like a ribbon of possibility. If you've ever ridden a Tiger before, you know that feeling of surprising refinement. That sensation that even on dirt, even when the terrain is unpredictable, the bike is filtering out just enough chaos so that you can focus on the ride instead of the survival. But the 2026 Rally Pro sharpens that sensation in a way that's hard to articulate. It's as if Triumph found a way to let more of the wildness in without sacrificing any control. More communication through the bars, more texture from the road, more truth in the feedback. And that's the hallmark of a great adventure motorcycle. It tells you what you need to know, and it keeps quiet about the rest. As you ride, the bike almost dissolves beneath you, its weight disappearing in motion, its size shrinking not physically, but psychologically. You begin to trust it. You begin to move with it instead of against it. You begin to forget where you end and the machine begins. Every once in a while, I like to drift into imagined ride sequences because it's the only way to describe the attitude of a bike that hasn't yet reached buyers, but feels alive in the collective imagination of riders around the world. So picture this with me, a narrow dirt track winding along the side of a mountain. The kind of track where the stones shift under your tires and the drop beside you falls away so far that the sunlight seems to dissolve before it reaches the bottom. You're standing on the pegs, knees slightly bent, body leaning forward, the tiger humming beneath you with a steady confidence. The suspension floats over the uneven ground, absorbing the inconsistencies, communicating just enough of the terrain to let you feel present, but never overwhelmed. You breathe in the cold, thin air, and for a second, it feels like the bike is breathing with you. That's the Rally Pro. Not dramatic, not showy, just capable. Deeply capable. And somewhere halfway through that imagined ride, you might remember, almost accidentally, to like and subscribe to SuperBike Intelligence. But that's the magic of the journey, right? The story pulls you in, the road reveals itself, and suddenly you're part of something larger than the screen in front of you. But let's drift now into something quieter, something slower. Imagine the same tiger parked under a street lamp late at night. Maybe you just came back from a long ride. Maybe you weren't even planning to stop this early, but the glow of the city drew you in. That soft humming in the air, the distant sound of tires on wet pavement, the quiet pulse of nightlife happening somewhere behind the buildings. The Rally Pro sits there almost statuesque, tall and lean and ready, the twin headlights catching the mist in the air. You take off your gloves and your hands are still humming with the memory of the ride. The vibration of the triple, the rhythm of shifts, the silent conversations between you and the bike as you navigated the dark stretches of road. And you realize something. The Tiger is one of those rare motorcycles that feels just as alive when it's standing still as when it's devouring miles. There's charisma in its stance, there's intent in its silhouette, and there's a story in its posture. The story of every rider who's ever used a motorcycle to escape something, or to find something, or just to feel like themselves again after a long day. That's the Triumph identity. That layered emotional depth, that sense of history without nostalgia, that ability to feel familiar and new at the same time. And that's probably why the Tiger line has lasted as long as it has. Because at its core, it's never been trying to be the flashiest, or the boldest, or the most intimidating. It's been trying to be the most true. Riding the 2026 Rally Pro feels like stepping into that legacy in a way that's both respectful and forward-looking. And it's fascinating to me how much of that experience comes through the smallest cues. The way the bars sit in your palms, the way the tank narrows where your knees rest, the way the wind curls around your helmet at highway speed, not fighting you, not clawing at your shoulders, but slipping past with a whisper like pages turning in a well-loved book. This is the kind of bike that makes you think about long journeys. The kind of bike that tempts you into taking the scenic route even when the direct path is easier. The kind of bike that reminds you that adventure isn't always about distance. Sometimes it's about presence, about being somewhere with intention. When you're cruising at a steady pace, the Tiger feels almost meditative. The engine settles into a low, velvety thrum, the chassis finds its balance, and the world becomes a soft tunnel of wind and motion. You feel the bike beneath you, but it's not asking for anything. It's simply moving with you, letting your thoughts unravel, letting your senses open, letting the horizon draw you forward. But crack the throttle, and the triple wakes up with a kind of fierce elegance. Not aggressive, not frantic. Just undeniably powerful. Like a large cat rising suddenly to its feet, muscle shifting, posture changing, energy flowing. It's the kind of acceleration that doesn't need theatrics. It knows what it is. It knows what it can do. That dual nature, calm but commanding, is what sets the Rally Pro apart in a world full of adventure bikes trying to scream their dominance. The Triumph doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It simply stands tall and lets its capability speak in quieter, more compelling tones. And somewhere along this narrative, let me gently remind you, if you've been enjoying this journey so far, feel free to leave a comment for SuperBike Intelligence. Tell us where you take the Tiger 1300 Rally Pro first. Tell us what kind of riding calls to you when no one else is around. Your stories fuel these stories. Now imagine rain, not a storm, just that gentle, steady drizzle that turns the world reflective. Streetlights stretching into gold streaks on the pavement. The air thick with the scent of wet earth and ozone. The kind of night where most riders would rather stay home. But adventure riders, they're wired differently. They feel something alive in the rain, something cleansing. You roll the Rally Pro out of the garage, the droplets collecting on the windscreen, the engine firing up with that warm, reassuring growl. As you ride through the gentle rain, the world feels more intimate, like the city has softened, like you've stepped into a pocket of time that exists only for you and the bike. The tires cut smoothly through the sheen of water, and instead of fear, you feel a strange comfort. Think about the price for a moment, not the number itself, but the meaning behind it. A bike like the Rally Pro is an investment in yourself, in your future adventures, in your willingness to explore the world beyond your routine. What you're really paying for is permission to chase the version of yourself that only appears when you're far from home. When the wind is doing the talking, when the horizon is no longer a boundary but an invitation. And that's where Triumph's design philosophy really comes through. They don't build bikes just for the brochure. They build them for life, for the real, messy, unpredictable experiences that define what it means to be a rider. Let's shift gears again. Imagine a broad, open plain at golden hour. The sun is dipping low, casting long shadows, turning the dust in the air into a shimmering curtain of amber. You're riding the Tiger at a steady pace. Not fast, not slow, just gliding across the land like a ship across calm water. The engine tone deepens in the warm air. The suspension floats, and the wind presses gently against your chest. In that moment, you understand something. Adventure is not a place. It's a state of mind. A willingness to embrace the unknown and trust that you are capable of meeting whatever comes. The Tiger 1300 Rally Pro embodies that mindset perfectly. It doesn't care if the road ahead is smooth or broken, paved or wild, predictable or dangerous. It exists to meet the world as it is, and to give you the confidence to do the same. And there's something almost poetic about the way Triumph has shaped this motorcycle. Every curve of its design has intention. Every detail is placed to support the ride, not distract from it. Depending on the color scheme they choose for 2026, I imagine the bike carrying this aura of rugged elegance. Not flashy, not trying to impress, but impossibly striking in its authenticity. It's the kind of bike that looks better the longer you stare at it. The kind of bike that still catches your eye in a crowded parking lot. The kind of bike that makes you pause for half a second before throwing a leg over, because you can feel the promise embedded in its frame. And somewhere around now, as we glide deeper into this story, let me gently whisper again, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to SuperBike Intelligence. This channel isn't just about motorcycles. It's about the way motorcycles make us feel, and I want you to be part of that journey. Now, let's step into the mountains again, but this time under starlight. The sky is clear, the temperature has dropped, and the road is a thin ribbon winding up through the darkness. The Tiger's headlights cut through the night, revealing textures in the asphalt you wouldn't normally notice. Subtle imperfections, tiny flecks of quartz sparkling in the beam. The world feels quiet, almost reverent, as if the mountain itself is listening to the rhythmic hum of the triple. You lean gently into a sweeping curve, the bike settling effortlessly, the suspension compressing just enough to let you feel the geometry working beneath you. It's moments like this, where precision meets instinct, that remind you why riding feels so deeply human. It's visceral, it's immersive, it demands presence. And the Rally Pro supports that presence like a perfectly tuned instrument. But the mountains aren't always kind, and that's where the character of the bike truly shines. Imagine the pavement suddenly giving way to loose gravel. Your heart skips a beat, that instant flash of uncertainty. But the Tiger remains unfazed. The traction control works quietly in the background, the suspension adapts, and the bike stays planted, calm, composed. You adjust your posture, ease the throttle, let the bike settle, and within seconds, the fear dissolves. Confidence returns. The journey continues. That's the intangible advantage of Triumph's engineering. It's not just about power or technology, it's about assurance, the kind that is earned, not advertised. And when dawn finally edges in, painting the horizon with soft blues and pinks, the Tiger's silhouette becomes almost symbolic, a dark shape against the awakening sky, a reminder that you've traveled through the night not just across terrain, but across versions of yourself. Riding does that. It transforms us. And motorcycles like the Tiger 1300 Rally Pro accelerate that transformation. As we begin approaching the end of this long, slow-burning narrative, I want to reflect on something deeper. Something that sits at the heart of why machines like this matter. In a world that's becoming increasingly automated, increasingly convenient, increasingly detached from physical experience, a motorcycle like the Rally Pro pulls us back into our bodies, into our senses, into the present moment. It forces us to feel the wind, to hear the engine, to smell the air shifting between city and countryside, to taste the dust on a remote trail, to see the world in ways that screens can't replicate. Adventure motorcycles, true adventure motorcycles, connect us to something primal, something ancient. The need to explore, to wander, to discover, to move forward even when you don't know exactly where the road leads. The Triumph Tiger 1300 Rally Pro 2026 seems built with that philosophy at its core. It's not just a motorcycle. It's a compass, a companion, a vessel for self-discovery. And when you finally park it at the end of a long journey, when you turn the key, the engine winds down, the heat radiates off the headers, and the world feels strangely quiet, you realize something. You are not the same person who climbed onto the bike this morning. You have expanded, you have absorbed new landscapes, new thoughts, new fears, new courage. You have lived fully and vividly for every mile. That is the purpose of a motorcycle like this. And as we close this story, I want to leave you with an image. Picture yourself years from now, older, wiser, a little more weathered, a little more grounded. You're sitting somewhere with a clear view of the horizon, maybe on a porch, maybe beside a tent, maybe at the edge of a cliff where the wind is whispering truths only you can hear. And beside you sits the Tiger 1300 Rally Pro, dusty from countless adventures, scratched in places, the paint slightly faded, the seat molded perfectly to your shape. It's more than a machine now. It's a map of everywhere you've been. A witness to every moment you chose courage over comfort. A symbol of the life you lived on your own terms. The motorcycle industry is always evolving. Technology changes, design trends shift, the world moves forward. But the essence of riding, the essence captured so beautifully by the 2026 Tiger 1300 Rally Pro, remains timeless. It is freedom, it is discovery, it is connection, it is truth. And as long as machines like this continue to exist, there will always be riders willing to chase the horizon. Thank you for spending this journey with me. If this narration stirred something in you, if it made you imagine roads you haven't ridden yet, consider liking and subscribing to SuperBike Intelligence. There are many more stories to tell, many more machines to explore, many more horizons waiting. Until next time, keep the throttle steady, keep the heart open, and may the road ahead always invite you forward.